We're going to answer this question before us, and these questions are notoriously a little bit tricky, so I'm really going to take my time with it. But of course, in a test situation, you would want to answer this as quickly as possible. But let's really take our time in just getting our head around what this is saying. It's saying that if cos of theta is equal to negative cos of 3 pi on 11, and theta has a domain of this, so theta is between negative 3 pi on 2 and pi, we need to find the values of theta. And when it's got the s here in brackets, it means there might be one value or multiple values. Okay, so how are we going to approach this question? Well, let's just first get our bearings a little bit, and let's get our bearings by just drawing for ourselves a unit circle. Let's see if I can draw that a bit better. Okay, that's good enough. Okay, now here it says I've got negative cos of 3 pi on 11. Well, the very first thing that we should realize is that we haven't remembered the exact values for 3 pi on 11, but that doesn't matter at all. We don't need to memorize the exact values for this. So if I've got 3 pi on 11, let's just kind of draw that in somewhere in the first quadrant. So 3 pi on 11, let's just draw it here. That there, we're calling 3 pi on 11. Now, if I'm dealing with cos of 3 pi on 11, that means I'm looking at the x value of it. So that means in this case, it would be a. And again, it doesn't matter that we don't know what a is. We don't need to in order to answer this question, because this question isn't concerned about exact values. Rather, it's concerned about angles. Okay. Now, it's not just after 3 pi on 11, a. It's after negative cos of 3 pi on 11. So if I know that cos of 3 pi on 11 here is what we're calling a, then if I've got negative in front of it, it means I'm after negative a. So where would that be? Well, negative a, if I'm dealing with cos, would be over here. That there would be negative a. And I know that this here would be 3 pi on 11 based on symmetry. Where other point would I get negative a out? Because I know I get negative a here. I would also get it out here. This would be negative a, negative b. And again, this angle right here would again be 3 pi on 11 based on symmetry. So hopefully you can see that these 2 points here would be places where I'm getting negative a out. And I actually don't care about this a1 here. So if you wanted to do this quickly, because you don't want to be taking that much time to do this really quickly, you would simply go, well, if I've got negative cos of an angle, that means I'm after the negative x values, and they exist in my second quadrant and my fourth quadrant. And you could answer, you could get to that point in a matter of seconds just by looking at this saying, well, cos is my x, I'm dealing with negative of that. That means I'm looking at my second and, that's the third quadrant, not fourth. So you don't have to go through all of those steps. What you just need to be able to recognize is, hey, this is after my second and third quadrant. Okay, now, what this question is asking now is, what are my theta values that give me negative a out? So you might be thinking, well, it's probably this one and this one. And hey, we could go around and come back there. We've got all of these different angles that get me to negative a. But this is where you've got to be a bit discerning and say, well, what does my domain tell me I have to get to? So what is my domain saying here? All right, so this is where you wouldn't actually do this in the test. You wouldn't draw out a number line for your domain, but because we're still learning, I want to do that for us. So you wouldn't do this in the test, but let's just do it here just to get a sense of what this is asking. All right, if my domain is from negative 3 pi on 2 to pi, well, there's pi on 2, there's pi, there's 3 pi on 2, and then going backwards, this would be negative pi on 2, this would be negative pi, this would be negative 3 pi on 2, and this would be negative 2 pi. That means if I'm going from negative 3 pi on 2 to pi, that means what I'm considering is here to here. All of these values here, from there to there. Okay, so if I'm considering all of those values, now I'm going to ask myself, okay, cos of what theta is going to give me negative a out, but I know that theta needs to exist in this domain. Okay, let's consider that now. Well, what if I went, always starting from here, obviously, to there? Does that fall within my domain? Absolutely, it does, because I'm in my second quadrant, and I know that my second quadrant is between pi on 2 and pi. So that means I'd be somewhere here. To get this point here, all I would do is go, well, theta is equal to pi minus 3 pi on 11. What is pi minus 3 pi on 11? Again, hopefully you don't need to do this, but you could go 11 pi on 11 minus 3 pi on 11. That's going to be 8 pi on 11. There's one of my answers. Then you might be thinking to yourself, well, could I do this now? Whoops. Could I go to there? And hopefully you can see that you can't go past pi, because if I was to go past pi, that means I'm going beyond my domain. So that's a no-go. I cannot consider pi plus 3 pi on 11. So let's get rid of that. But is that my only answer? Well, no, it's not, because I can go backwards. So I could go here and consider my negative angles. What would this negative angle be? Well, if I know that this is, now this is where we're going to be discerning. This would be negative pi if I'm reading it backwards. So I'm going negative pi, and then I'm going back 3 pi on 11. So this time I would say, well, this is negative pi plus 3 pi on 11. And then once you've done your calculations here, what you're going to end up with is negative 8 pi on 11. And let me do it slowly. Let me do it. You'd go negative 11 pi on 11 plus 3 pi on 11 is negative 8 pi on 11. Is that all of my answers? No, we are not done yet. I could also go, because actually, before I move on, that point right there, where would that be? Well, here's 0. I've gone past negative pi on 2. It would be somewhere in that quadrant to there. Can I keep on going? Absolutely I can, because now I could consider this one right there. Now that's a bit more than negative pi. So I'm going to be in this quadrant right there. So to get this angle, I would go, all right, I'm going to negative pi, and then I'm minusing onto that negative 3 pi on 11, because I want to add it. But remember, because you're dealing with negative, things are a bit weird. This is going to be negative 11 pi on 11 minus 3 pi on 11. Now, what's that going to be? That's going to be negative 14 pi on 11. So now we've generated all our answers. So that means I can write down my answer as theta is going to be 8 pi on 11, negative 8 pi on 11, and negative 14 pi on 11. These are all the angles that fit within my domain that give me negative a out. That is how you would approach a question like this. And of course, you'd want to do it a lot quicker than the way I've done it, but I've just slowly worked it through with you so you can get an understanding of what's happening. But again, you'd want to do this a lot quicker in a test situation. And also remember, there are different ways of going about this. This is just the way that I find most helpful, but there are different ways of thinking about it. Hopefully you found this helpful. I'll see you in the next one.